I feel like at least the people that I'm around, everybody is very critical about the vaccination. But I think that is the most critical point, because there are still a lot of people who are just waiting every day and praying for a vaccine to come out so that they can live their normal lives, which I always say the normal was the
Yeah.
problem. That's why we're in the situation that we are in now. So it's not really the thought of going back to normal. It's actually going into something completely different that is more where we are more empowered and not some kind of government or private investors.
Yeah.
And I just find it weird how people want a vaccination, but a lot of people still think vaccines are uh, heaven sent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is, I think, a main debate a lot of times, because they think a vaccine helps their immune system. So what is it really like? One of the questions that I have um, concerning diet and immune system, people want to strengthen their immune system. What is it about the immune system? And when we talked about elimination, that is really about, what you put in your body that comes out when you catch a virus or whatever it is. And then they feel, oh, they have a weak immune system. But actually, it's your immune system allowing you to eliminate, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of theories and viewpoints about the immune system and the way it works needs to be reevaluated. We look at this a lot differently. Where so if we use, and we generally don't use that term because it's kind
Yeah.
of medical industry kind of term, but people they look at that and they say, okay, immune system, I have to build up my immunity. So your true immunity is not having all the filth and the waste tucked away in your body for these microbes to live. And so a lot of times when people start practicing the mucus diet, and if they do any kind of fasting or enemas, and they start to get out worms, and everybody should know they have worms. People are weirded out by it, and they're like, oh, and they're kind of like, oh, that's disgusting. I'm like, you've had those in your body all your life because you've been eating meat. So I mean,
Yeah.
they're your friends. I don't know why you're so weirded out by it, but that's the thing. As long as you are encumbered with waste, then you will always have a compromised system. And so you can and the with the vaccines, they claim that you expose yourself to a certain strain of the viruses, and then your body creates the antibodies, and there's
Yeah.
that whole theoretical framework, and we just don't get into that at all, because it's like, first of all, I know people that have my friend Brother Air, who got me into the mucus diet. His son, how they say, most people, when you're a child, you have, there's no way to prevent chicken pox, and and you get like a chicken pox vaccination so that it's not as bad. But most kids have what they call chicken pox elimination. I did, but I also had plenty of vaccines. Now, our Brother Air's son Hanif, he's never been to a doctor. He's never had a vaccine or a shot. He's never even eaten at a restaurant. He never got chicken pox. He never had any of those kind of eliminations. So
Wow.
now it's like, well, wait a minute. How come the person that didn't get any of that stuff didn't have that, never got chicken pox, never had those kind of initial eliminations?
Mm.
Is it possible that they're through these vaccines? What are they giving you? If they're giving you,
Yes, yes, yes.
you're giving you this stuff. And because most of the time when people that do go through these eliminations, like I haven't had any kind of before. I've been practicing the mucus diet since 2002. The last time I probably got a vaccine was probably 2001, before I started practicing the diet. And
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had any kind of flu, or any like flu, I've had some, natural elimination things, especially early on in my transition. I haven't had anything, in the
Yes.
past 3 or 4 years, those kind of eliminations, and I'm not scared of them. I welcome that. If I'm going to get a cold and flu-like symptom, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to do some enemas. I'm fasting. I'm going to rest, let whatever's going on, just take this as a moment and an opportunity to eliminate waste from the body. And so we
Yeah.
tend to not even look at it, that whole elimination process as negative. Uh, it's just, it becomes harder and harder for you to even go through that kind of elimination, because once the cleaner you get, because it's just, there's nothing there, that those triggers don't happen. I mean, I used to go through cold and flu-like symptoms all the time, multiple times a year, almost constantly. I would be going through something, and I was, taking a bunch of pills, eating horribly, and I walked around school with tissue boxes when I was growing up. And
Wow.
I had migraine headaches almost every day, and so I'd go to the nurse. They had over the counter, like Advil and Tylenol, for me, that I got a prescription for from the doctor, so I could go to the nurse, take the pills, lay there for 15 minutes, and go back to class. That, I mean, that was not cool. It just was not fun, but I didn't know any better. So that had became normal for me to go through that kind of experience all the time, that kind of lifestyle. And I just didn't make the connection that
Yeah.
you eliminate the poor eating,
Mm-hmm.
and clean out your gut, clean out your system. Because, if you are getting into this, and you've never done any kind of cleansing or anything, or even if you have, if you're kicking it up a notch and going down this kind of mucus free path,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably going to have some eliminations. So you're gonna,
Yeah.
get the tissues ready, get ready to do some enemas and fast and that kind of thing. But it's finite. It's not indefinite where you're always going through that. Your body kind of puts you on a fast track to get all of this stuff out of your system in a
Yes.
concentrated period of time, depending on how you practice it. But for me, it was like a concentrated period of time over the first couple of years of practicing the diet. I had real intense eliminations, but I could feel that they were different than in the past, that these were permanent eliminations because I wasn't putting the pus and mucus forming foods back in. When I
Yes. Yes.
used to be sick growing up, I, I would eat some of the worst stuff that you could possibly eat. I would have these grilled cheese and bacon sandwiches and tomato juice and tomato soup. And that was my sick meal. So I'd be laying there coughing up mucus, blowing my nose and stuff. And and I'm not even really hungry, but because they say, oh, you got to eat, you got to get your,
Yeah.
whatever. And so I would, instead of, because we just didn't know, in my, my parents had raised me, they just didn't know. It wasn't like a lot of people, you just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, so I was, eating that stuff. And then it would take weeks, instead of taking days, those eliminations could happen in a matter of days. It would take weeks, because the body, because
Mm-hmm.
on top of that too, then
Of
I'm also
course.
taking
Yeah.
suppressants, all the Sudafed and, the over the counter kind of penicillins and all that kind of stuff. And so that
Mm.
also makes this whole process more complicated and take longer. So it's just not a, now that I've experienced the other side of trying to live a more natural life, dealing with things with using foods, cleansing out the system. It's just an easier way to live in the long run. You don't have to go through all that. It's can be deceptive at first because there are hardships. This is not an easy path. But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the hardships are social issues, dealing with
Yeah.
people that are hard on you because it's like crabs in a basket. They don't want you to leave. So you start talking about, you know, I'm eating fruits and vegetables, I'm going vegan, you know, I'm fasting, and you get a lot of pushback from the people that are closest to you. And so that those are the kinds of things, more so than this like ironclad willpower and all this kind of stuff. It For most people, that becomes the hardest part of this is the social thing, because you if when you start going down this road and you realize, you know, eating mucus forming foods is an addiction, and just like other addiction therapies, they say, well, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that you have a problem and that you're addicted. And so I had to
Yes.
come to that realization and say, you know, I'm addicted to meat products and dairy and these mucus products that are the foundation of why I'm experiencing all these negative symptoms. You know, so I had to come to that realization first and foremost, and at the same time, work the system to transition off of these foods so that they could be permanent transitions, and not, you know, to permanent transformations, and not just, like I said, we're not being hard on yourself. You know, people sometimes, they don't know what to do with the energy that we bring when we're talking about, because I'm fairly aggressive in terms of the mental side of the mucusless diet, or just the mental side of, you know, as they say today, woke, you know, waking up. So, but when it comes to the actual practice, people are sometimes surprised with how lenient my opinion is on transitional foods, you know, and finding things that help you just get a little bit further along, because I'd rather see somebody be able to stick to the system and continue, because, you know, regardless of what you're eating, there's certain principles that are laid out in the system that can always help you continue to move forward, but you got to know them and you got to do them. And so, so when it comes to the eating, you know, I'm more lenient, you know, I'm pragmatic, because I want people to have that transition. But when it
Yeah.
comes to the mentality, letting go of a lot of the, you know, I'm hard on nutrition theories, you know, I'm hard on these things that we've been conditioned to believe since we were very young. And it
Yeah.
goes deep, because the conditioning, the other day, I was looking at these old commercials from the 1950s that were like bread commercials and dairy commercials and stuff. And they have always promoted, or at least in that era, they would promote these terrible foods on the presumption that you have to have them, that you have to. Humans didn't drink the
Yeah.
milk of other animals. That's absolutely absurd objectively.